Welcome back, Mr. Fusco.
Thank you. Glad to be back. Glad to say that I watched the meetings on the videotapes, so that was helpful.
Dan, did it add 10 years? I just need to know.
Excuse me?
Did it add 10 years?
No, it was
Oh,
beautiful.
oh.
I got some questions regarding the administrative report that we went through. And I guess my top question is, are there going to be any financial impacts or repercussions from all this opting out? Is it going to somehow affect the state aid or the federal aid that we get?
And that's a good question. There are regulations that indicate there could be. We have not seen that. We've gotten reports that if you don't test 95% or more of your children, that you fail to make adequate yearly progress. But that was originally designed for schools that were failing to test kids for chronic absenteeism or some other reason that was not really acceptable. In this case, the refusals are coming from the parents' right to choose, and they're choosing not to have their kids sit for these tests. The district cannot forward that as an option, but we will respect parents who submit those letters, and that's what we've been doing. So we have seen indications from the state and federal government that there could be financial penalties. We have not seen that, and I speak to literally hundreds of superintendents. We don't know of any cases where that's actually occurred.
Are they talking about estimated numbers? Or
No.
Is it too premature?
I don't think I think it's not premature. It's been 3 years of people opting their kids out. So I think they're not. My estimation is they're not going to pull that trigger.
Because that's a state test that everybody was opting out for?
It's a state test that the federal government says we must test every kid in grades 3 through 8 every year in English, language arts, and math. The state has some leeway in how they administer those tests, what those tests look like, the amount of data that they give us, and whether or not they're going to use it for teacher evaluation. So you've got two parts to that. The advocacy work that we've been doing has been with both the state and the federal government. I have an advocacy meeting next Tuesday with the Assistant Secretary for Education for the United States to propose an alternative plan to the current testing model. It's an uphill battle, but nonetheless, they are continuing to have a conversation.
And the regions are state tests as well, right?
They are.
The SATs are not state, the ACTs are not state tests.
That's correct.
The IB tests, those are not state tests?
Correct.
But we use those to, I guess, to show our rankings. As we went through some few slides of that.
We want to gauge how well our students are doing with regard to what do they want to do when they're done. For the most part here, they want to go to college. So if they have this high-level coursework, they have good SAT scores, they have IB experience or AP experience or college-level coursework experience, they're going to be able to not only go to college, but get some money and maybe do well, stay in school.
So those ELR tests are not going to be, not something that you could use as a ranking?
ELR.
Whatever you're opting out of.
Oh, I'm not. Will some districts do that? They might, but if we've only tested roughly half the kids, you can imagine that those rankings would be skewed.
Next question I had was on the bid items. Several times, some of the women here stood up and asked if you could add another column to show what the dollar amounts of the bids were, the winning bids.
At this point, we're not doing the budget, the agenda yet. We're just doing the budget presentation.
Or just the budget.
But there'll be another question and answer period where you can ask questions about the agenda.
Okay, then I think that's it for.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions about tonight's presentation? It's a bit of a change from a few years ago when we were reducing things and still raising taxes, and understandably so. So I want to thank the board for their support over the years in getting to a place where we can have a budget that is stable, that puts the best interest of students in mind, and we don't have to reduce programs. So, and I know it wasn't easy. Mrs. Wood and I were, and our staff, the administrative staff, were very conscious of the fact that when we were making those changes, it was hard. We had an eye to the future, as did you, and your foresight has clearly paid off.
With that, I turn to Mr. Hartman to read the board structure statement.
I would like to read a concise statement regarding the structure of our public board meetings. The meeting has two opportunities for public comment, one at the beginning of the meeting and a second one regarding only specific agenda items, and one at the end of the meeting where public comment could be on other items related to school district matters. Please note on the following three items that the board would like the community to be aware that these opportunities are for public comment only and not intended to be question and answer sessions or opportunities for public debate. Questions may be responded to at a later date and or the next available board meeting. The public comment does not allow for any kind of positive and negative by a specific employee, particularly as it relates to his or her job performance. And last, any matters related to specific students, including but not limited to disciplinary matters, will not be discussed. Community members are interested in sharing their thoughts and concerns. The board makes available a multitude of venues for them to share these discussions with community, including budget workshops, community-based meetings, and that are well attended by the administration and Board of Education members. In conclusion, the board will adhere to these policies and structures set forth in an effort to allow for a productive and meaningful experience for everyone here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. Now, at this time, we will have public participation, and if you have any questions regarding agenda items only, you can come to the mic. There will be another opportunity at the end of the meeting to discuss anything else, agenda or not agenda related.
I guess you guys can let them have all the questions. All right, so my question was on the bids. Several times in several of these meetings, I've heard a request that you put the winning bid amount in the column so we could see what kind of costs are being expended.
So, what you may have missed in your absence or didn't pick up on videos either way is that the Board of Education, at the behest of several board members, Mr. Hartman spearheading this and to a large degree, is moving from a paper board agenda to an electronic under something called board docs. So we're in the process now of more or less piloting that. We'll begin unfolding that for the community. And it is anticipated that some of the requests, such as that one, would be addressed when that becomes accessible by the public. So I anticipate when we have the June meeting, the board is going to continue to pilot. In July, we're going to unfold some to the community, and then in September, we expect to be at full implementation, and you'd be able to see backup and documentation associated with things such as that, which would include the pricing.
Sticking with the bids, I see on one of them, cafeteria equipment repairs, you rejected all the bids. Does that mean you put it out to rebid, or do they just live with the broken cafeteria equipment?
I'll ask Mrs. Newman to address that.
Yes, that bid is being asked to be rejected by the board. No action has yet been taken. No rebid has been done until after the board takes action.
The next thing I saw was under legal, which is always scary. There's a note that the board is requesting to approve a memorandum of agreement between the district, the CTA, and a particular teacher. I know you can't go into specifics about teacher's name and specifics, but can you give us some kind of assurance that this isn't something that should warrant us being worried about?
I can absolutely assure you it's something you shouldn't be worried about.
And it's foilable. It's foilable once approved by the board. It will redact the teacher's name, but it's a foilable document.
Okay. Very good. And then the last question I have, I think, at this part of the meeting is something's going to be removed from the consent agenda, so I guess you're going to talk about that separately, but I guess my question will preempt your dialogue. Life's work to provide the district with behavioral intervention services for 2015 to 16. Can you just give us a brief explanation of what life's work is? I think I Googled it, and I think I know what it is. Can you give us some sort of a cost of what we're going to expend on that?
I will ask Mrs. Ryan, who's nodding, if she absolutely can address your question.
So you're probably aware that within the district we have a number of special ed students with the gamut of needs. Many of those students require some home-based services. We have consulting in children's services, but managing our home services.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Bryan.
Anybody else?
Anyone else?
Okay, with that being the case, we will then move to acknowledgement on behalf of the Board of Education. I will acknowledge the following receipt of the following correspondence, communication dated April 15th, 2015, from Jen Godina regarding the 2015-2016 district calendar. This item was handled administratively. Communication dated April 16th, 2015, from Kevin Fight regarding the school district budget, also handled administratively. And one dated April 13th from Teresa Burke, congratulating the Commack Middle School students, and we thank you, Teresa. With that, we'll move to the consent agenda. At this time, I ask if there's any board member who has any item that has not already been pulled out, to be pulled out.
Yes, I have an item that I request to be pulled. Item B, under donations, the donation from Rolling Hills PTA in the amount of $23.83 for use of playground equipment. Can we please pull that item and table it?
Do I need to make a motion?
You have to vote on motion table.
Okay, so this is...
Oh, how, on the consent agenda, I guess the chair can just like take it on the consent committee. I think the chair can pull it from consent, but then the board would have to vote on the motion to table.
So I will pull item B under donations, the Rolling Hill donation for playground equipment. I will pull that from the consent agenda. And now may I have a motion to table that? Motion made by Mrs. DiGirolamo, seconded by Mr. Hartman. All in favor? Okay, thank you. Thank you. So with that, may I have a motion to approve all remaining items on the consent agenda? Motion made by Mrs. Masiello, seconded by Mrs. DiGirolamo. All in favor? Passed unanimously. And now, before I go any further, I would like to acknowledge the one donation from the Commack Girls Diamond Booster Club, offering 20 new Russell Athletic Girls softball uniforms valued at $3,400 to be used by the high school varsity softball team. We thank you very much, as always, and particularly we really appreciate all that the Booster Clubs do for all of our athletic teams and our clubs. It's a value added, and you know it's not easy. As a Booster Club member for many of my children's extracurricular activities, I know every dollar is a lot of sweat and tears to raise, so we appreciate that very much. And then, that I move to the items removed from the consent agenda, and I apologize. Vice Versa. Okay, so now may I have a motion to approve the contract with Life's Work to provide the district with behavioral intervention services for the 2015-2016 school year. These funds will be paid from code A2250-400-00. Motion made by myself, seconded by Mr. Hartman. Discussion.
Mrs. Stewart,
Yes.
if I could, the reason that was removed from the consent agenda, I need to get into the minutes that one of our audit committee members is the executive director of this firm. However, she is not an owner and does not have any direct or material interest in the firm providing services to the district. So we just want to get that into the record.
Thank you very much. So I have a motion. All in favor? Passed unanimously. I now move to board business, and on behalf of the Board of Education, I hereby acknowledge receipt of the CSE, CPSC recommendations on dates listed on the agenda. In addition, I acknowledge receipt of the statement for professional services rendered on non-retainer matters. In addition, I also acknowledge receipt of the internal claims auditor's monthly update and the following financial reports as listed on the agenda. I now the board is asked to adopt a resolution. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Commack Union Free School District shall hold a special meeting on, June 4th. June 4th at 6:30 at Hub's Administration. It is anticipated that the Board of Education will make a motion for the purpose of adjourning into executive session at this time. It is anticipated that no public action will be taken at this meeting. In addition, the Board of Education is requested to adopt the following resolution. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Commack Union Free School District shall hold its regular meeting on Thursday, June 11th at 6:30. Am I doing something wrong?
No, we're just checking.
Oh, okay. At 6:30, just making sure. At 6:30 at Commack High School, 1 Scholar Lane, Commack, New York. It is anticipated that the Board of Education will make a motion for the purpose of adjourning into executive session at that time, and that at 7:30 the Board will reconvene in public session for the purpose of holding its regular board meeting. And lastly, the Board, so do I have to make a motion on that? On those resolutions?
Yes.
I'm sorry, so, motion made by Mrs. DiGirolamo, seconded by Mrs. Masiello, all in favor? Passed unanimously, and now, for information, the Board of Education would like to announce that on May 19th, there will be a budget vote and trustee election from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. at the Commack Middle School and Commack High School. And with that, I now open...
Mrs. Goober and Mrs. Masiello, I'm sorry for the sidebar conversation, but on this announcement, she rightfully points out that immediately after the close of the trustee election, the Board of Education will need to accept the results of their vote.
Yes, we will. We will meet to accept. So then, do I need a motion?
That's just an announcement.
Okay, very good. And now, with that, I think I would have figured this out after a year, but I'm sorry. And now, after that, one more time to do it right, thanks. Move to public participation. You know what? They pushed it right into the grave. They dug the hole and they just pushed me right in. Public participation on any items, agenda or not.
Want to stick them on? Hi, everyone. I just got 2 quick questions. Regarding the Faith Council and all, do you know how the original committee was formed? Because some of it says parents were involved and some of it says parents weren't involved, and there's like a discrepancy. I was just curious how it got formed in the original.
It was more or less pulled together as fast as we could because we were in crisis to a certain degree. And so I spoke to some interfaith leaders. We called and said, can you come? It was very short notice. We had like 48 hours. So we have several rabbis. We have a couple of folks from Lutheran Church. We have from the Catholic Church. We have students that the high school identified. I'm there as well. We have some administrators there, board members, and that was the original group. So defining them as parents, the parents, they have some participation outside now. That being said, now that we've formed the 3 smaller groups, those 3 smaller groups will meet, and there will be parents at large, if you will. Some of those parents may become part of the steering committee. So this is part of how we're trying to manage this. We didn't want to sort of let time elapse so we can have a perfect meeting and do some kind of big outreach, because the issue was we really need to start to have this conversation because people were hurt and there were obviously things happening at the school, and we wanted to start getting that conversation going. So that's, just be perfectly frank, that's exactly how we did it.
Perfect. And then just another step. There was literature sent out that, and it's kind of being taken 2 different ways, that community service credit was given if children joined or went to any of these functions. Is that right? Is that wrong? Was the information, because I belong to the Y, and I got an email saying that high school children could receive community service point. One, it's after the deadline for the year, and second of all, we weren't sure if they had permission to put that out there.
Well,
We just had to bring it to your
we weren't the only school district invited, so I called about that too. So,
Oh, okay.
I don't remember saying that was okay. Not that it wouldn't,
No,
but our
no.
deadline had passed and so on and so forth.
Exactly.
But there was another school district invited and they had agreed, which is why I think it said that you may receive.
Perfect.
So
Okay.
it may have created some confusion, but that's, they put the flyer together. Part of this is creating those linkages with these organizations and groups I mentioned earlier. It's really great. Moving forward, as we put together events with them, they'll know how that kind of works and how to manage it.
Except his name, to be honest, that's fine.
Sorry.
I expected them to be on their
Yes,
contact.
this is one of those that actually, although she was present and active and very engaged, she didn't organize it. So, although that's a great idea.
Oh, sorry, Deborah. I'm sorry. Okay, and then the final thing, question was brought up, and again, it was given to me to present because I don't have children that participate in our order. So the question was, what is the process for when children opt out? Where do they go? Why aren't they being asked to be removed? And if you're aware, you may not be aware, but the impression that the children that do take the test, when put together with the children that are, I was told, this is what they got the impression, was that they were put into another room and they got to do basically whatever they want with the supervision from the school. Now again, that,
Children who took
the children that took the test were taking the test, but when the children, and again, doesn't affect me, my
That's okay.
children are too old, but I said I would come and get the answer and it would be on the paper.
I will give you a general answer.
Just general.
Because it is an issue. So the
Because there's
kids,
so many.
the kids whose parents opt them out of the tests do go to a separate location. And we can't provide them any instruction because then the students who are taking the tests would miss that instruction. But we also don't want them to just sit and stare. So there is this, in some districts, they just say you have to sit and stare. You can't do anything else. We don't think that's appropriate. And so we allow them to do some supervised activities, but not necessarily, there's no movie watching, there's no games. Now, could there have been anomalies? I'm not going to speak to that, but the guidance is, can you read, depending on your age? If you're younger, you might be able to color, but predominantly you're supposed to be reading and doing things that are sort of academic in nature, but aren't going to give you sort of a leg up on the kids who are taking the test. Parent can certainly feel free. We are not offended. We get all kinds of questions about this. Either call me or Dr. Kaur or the building principal and ask the question. A lot of variables, a lot of different teachers, a lot of different kids, a lot of different classes. So we have no problems if they want to call and ask us. If I could tell you, we're being accommodating because we're talking about children. And these are adult issues, and children are, in my opinion, stuck in the middle. So we're doing our best to be accommodating to the parents because I get that they're concerned. So if it were me, I'd be concerned too.
And did that change just from the past 2 years where they were under the impression that if your child opted out, you needed to remove your child and then bring them back?
No.
Was that ever the issue?
That was never.
Okay.
In fact, if you take them out, parents do. Parents take them out and bring them back, or take them out for the whole day. Again, it's the parents' prerogative.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Susan.
it.
One of the slides we saw up there was about the rebates that are supposedly going to come for being under the tax cap and all that jazz. The rebate, as I understand it, and from reading the documentation, is associated with cost sharing. You have to do cost sharing with other districts somehow. Can you identify what kind of cost sharing we did in this district to
So
qualify for this?
I'm gonna give a little prelim to this, and I'm gonna turn it over to Mrs. Newman. The state has been very slow in providing guidance on this. We're confident that we're going to qualify, and we've been working with other school districts, but at this point, I'm going to let Mrs. Newman expand upon that.
Sure, cost-sharing services are only one factor of the government efficiency plan that the state will accept. As a matter of fact, on yesterday, I was going to say Wednesday, it seems like it was so long ago, yesterday, the Western Suffolk BOCES component districts, we all met, we gathered, we shared some of our cost savings that we've identified. As Dr. James has said, the state has been woefully slow in issuing guidance regarding specifics. The government efficiency plan has to be filed with SED on June 1st. So we are still awaiting additional guidance from SED as to what they will accept, but we are well on our way to providing the plan for Commack, and we will be submitting it timely.
Well, are you doing the cost sharing as a participant in BOCES, or are you doing the cost sharing in other methods?
The cost sharing predominantly would be BOCES services, which we participate quite heavily in.
So there was some, because in the budget when I downloaded it, this form came up where it's got cost sharing for administrators. Are we sharing administrators?
No, we are not. That would be the case of if you were literally sharing an administrator with another district.
And that's something we're not doing.
Not presently, no, not at this size. You may see that at some of your smaller East End districts, but that's probably predominantly where you might see that in some upstate northern tier.
I missed all the budget hearings, unfortunately.
They're all online?
Yeah, I see them. But I do have some questions that I guess it's too late for this year. Maybe looking into next year, we can consider them. One of the handouts that we had showed the actuals and the budgeted amounts. And then you have a percentage going from budgeted amount to budgeted amount, where the percentage increases are very low because you're going from a budgeted amount that you didn't use to a projected budget that's pretty similar. And the percentages are, I guess misleading, and I don't want to have to say they're deceptive, but when you look at the numbers, you go, when you compare an actual to this year's budgeted, you go from a 0% increase to a 27% increase on, let's just say, auditing claims, the claims auditor, auditing fees, you're up 30% rather than 23%. Purchasing OC services, instead of being down 31%, you're actually up 8,980%. Another one here, 8.25% is really 25% from what you actually spent last year to what you're projecting to use next year. And the list just keeps going on, and the percentages are really skewed: 0% to 50%, 5% to 24%, 119% is actually 543%. So maybe that's something we can consider next year. I know that's something that Mr. Tampolini brought up about reviews and so on. When I went through the budget numbers also, there seems to be a lot of money spent on BOCE services, and that's basically all it's explained as, is BOCE services. Can somebody explain what exactly BOCE services are in line items? Because we're spending approximately I think I ended up to $7 or $8 million a year for BOCE services. And I think I brought this up a few years ago. Are we getting $7 or $8 million worth of value out of the BOCE services? Because again, a lot of it's duplicative. We're paying for a lot of BOCE's administrators. We're paying for a lot of BOCE's personnel. That I don't know if the costs.
So I'll try to answer part of it, and then I'll add Mrs. Newman, maybe expand upon it. So we send all kinds of students to BOCE's for services. Some very, very high needs students. There are other types of BOCE services that are provided for us as well, whether we're talking about professional development or training or things of that nature. We also do get BOCE's reimbursement, meaning we get a percentage back depending on the type of service. So the $7 million may not be actually $7 million because we may get 40% in return in state aid. So that's a cost-driven state aid number. So you may get some in return, depends on the type of service that you provide. So that's sometimes why you see, as you talked about, these wild fluctuations in some of those costs because of how we manage that as we budget for anticipated needs for students. Then the CSE takes place, and maybe those services aren't required or those services are required. So what looks like, in your words, to be a wild fluctuation is actually an acceptable practice. So for now, for the alternative, Mrs. Newman, regarding the types of things that might be under BOCE's.
Sure. Did an excellent job outlining the educational services, but beyond that, we utilize BOCE's for many different services. One that stuck out that you read was you'd said, we have BOCE's personnel. We do not have BOCE's personnel. I believe you're referring to probably code 1430.
1430, 490.
1430 of the personnel department. So what you're seeing there is not a salary or personnel cost. It is the utilization of BOCES to provide some personnel administrative purchased areas. For instance, we contract through BOCES for our teacher substitute system. That we contract with BOCES because we get a better price, and in addition to that, we generate BOCES aid, as Dr. Jameson said, in the vicinity of about 40% aid, depending on what COSER or what shared service is used.
So you're saying we get substitute teachers through BOCES? Is that?
We utilize a computer system that we contract with BOCES.
BOCES question. One of the videos that I watched, I guess it was 2 meetings ago or so, I saw Mr. Tampolini asking about raises that weren't shown on the line items in the budget. And I guess the conversation went back and forth that you guys said you didn't want to show the raises in the line items because you didn't want people to know that or expect that they might get a raise. So my question is it proper to present the budget to the public? And you're claiming that it's an accurate budget, but you're not accurately portraying the money for raises in the line items where they should be?
So I'll try to respond to that. It is absolutely proper. There are all kinds of increases associated with staffing that are unknown at this time when we pass a budget, which would be true in literally every single school district in the state. In particular, if you have to hire staff, you have to hire staff at different steps. You have staff that haven't been evaluated yet. You have contracts that haven't been settled. And so there are also allowances for, as Mr. Newman pointed out, staff that go out on maternity leave or out on sick leave. We have to hire staff to come in and fill in for them. So the variables are broad. So in some cases, it is a known number, and in some cases, there are those variables. And as you know, and we'll say it again, we project all of those at about a 97% or better accuracy rate. And so no raise is issued to a staff member without it being done in public. So if the board determines they want to give raise to non-aligned personnel after their evaluation, which you can't do in March because the school year has not been completed, that is done in public session.
Yeah, but I think the argument was if you're going to give people raises, and you've done so in the past, you've set a pattern, you have to know or assume that these people, somebody's going to get something. And whether you include it in the line item and then you don't give it to them, at least the money is accounted for in the line item. That's the way I see it.
Thank you.
I was looking to see if you guys could give us a status on the audit that's going on by the Controller's Office. Is there any sort of update, you know, when they're going to be finished, or is it finished?
I guess Mr. Newman may have a better idea.
It's the New York State Controller's Office who makes the determination. Thus far as we are aware, their field work is done. Other than that, it's on their timeline, not ours.
So the field work is done, now it's in their hands, finalize it? Okay.
I don't know if they will come back or not. Again, if that's their
They could
timeline.
come back if they decide they want more information.
Sure.
And I guess I just want to play devil's advocate for a second. If the controller finds that there's been some overestimating in the budgets, who would ultimately be the person that would be responsible for doing that?
We're doing what?
Is it one individual person?
We're doing what?
If the controller's office finds, their findings are that we've been overestimating our budgets to perhaps circumvent the tax cap, what one individual would be the person that would be responsible for doing that?
Well, there is no way to circumvent the tax cap. So tax cap is tax cap is tax cap. You can't break the tax cap. So I don't understand the question.
I think you understand the question.
I wanted to remark, actually, the information that Mrs. Newman had provided was through my discussions with the Controller's Office, and the document basically said that an unappropriated fund balance, which you see go on, which is the money that had been discussed, this has been put together, is the fact the controller's office says that what you're doing in that practice is, as shown in the slides, is fine. So if the controller's office comes back and says differently, we as a board will take a look and evaluate it. It's the board's decision to make that ultimate decision.
Okay, so ultimately, it's the board's responsibility?
It's the board's
budget.
The board's budget.
All right, very good. And I think the last question I had today was not really a question, but a comment. Got this today in the mail, Commack Courier. And I think we need the math guru, Mrs. Gerst, to go through it. I think you have to send out maybe a correction because it looks like your numbers are all askew on the chart here. I think you had it correct up on the slide, but here, the one you sent out to the 20,000 residents of the town with 20,000 homes or whatever is wrong. So,
Talk about this page.
right here. Commack School District Proposed Budget, Financing Plan. It was right up on the chart, but the one we sent out to everybody to read is all off.
All right, thank you, we'll review it. Obviously, we don't
I think you
know what
got to
we're
send
talking about,
out,
so we have a chance
I think
to
you
look.
got to send something out telling people that the numbers are wrong. I didn't make note of what slide it was.
Well, you know, I don't want to say that the numbers are wrong until we have a chance to look at it, and obviously you're videotaping what we say, so if you
Okay.
imply that the numbers are wrong without us verifying that.
I think you could just take a quick look and
Wow.
see that
Thank you.
183 million minus 183 million isn't 2 million. There's some numbers that are positive that should be negatives, and then there's just general addition errors. I didn't mean to be, just saying, I think you
Okay, thank you.
need to correct it and send it out so that people could see what the true picture is.
Yeah, great. Anyone else would like to come to the microphone for any questions? Motion to adjourn.
With that, may I have a motion to adjourn my penultimate board meeting? Motion made by myself, seconded by Mr. Hartman. All in favor? Yes.